Aerosucre. Alright, let's talk about Aerosucre, the Colombian cargo airline that seems to have taken the phrase living on the edge a little too seriously. Founded in 1969, this airline has built a reputation for flying freight and occasionally playing fast and loose with the laws of physics. Now, if you look at their fleet, you might think you've stepped into a time machine. Their aircraft lineup is basically a Boeing retirement home with old school 727s and 737s still chugging along. If planes could talk, these would probably be screaming for a pension. But let's get to the real reason we're talking about Aerosucre, the accidents. This airline has a history that makes even the boldest pilots sweat. In 2016, an overweight Boeing 727 couldn't quite clear the runway and ended up in flames, tragically killing 5 of the 6 crew members. Before that, they were caught flying dangerously overloaded planes, and in 1991, passengers were reportedly forced to lie on the floor of the cargo plane because, get this, it had no seats. At that point, you're basically hitchhiking through the sky. And then there are the viral videos. If you've ever seen an airplane take off at what looks like ground level, skimming rooftops like it's auditioning for an action movie, chances are it was Aerosucre. Despite all this, they're still flying. So if you ever find yourself booking a cargo shipment with Aerosucre, just know you're not just shipping goods, you're sending them on a wild adventure. TAM Airlines. You think you've had bad flights? Try TAM Airlines, the undisputed heavyweight champion of airline disasters, both figuratively and tragically, literally. When an Airbus A320 skidded off Sao Paulo's criminally short runway, tried to take off again, and exploded into a TAM-owned building, irony at its finest, it was less of a shock and more of an inevitability. Now, let's be fair, it's not just TAM's fault. Brazil's entire aviation system operates like a Monty Python skit, only with actual life or death consequences. The country's biggest airport is so overcrowded that navigating it requires the patience of a Buddhist monk and the endurance of an ultra-marathoner. Picture this: hours of standing in line just to stand in another line, which leads to another line, and eventually, if you're really lucky, to an actual flight. But don't get too excited because that flight is almost certainly delayed or cancelled. Speaking of delays, an experienced travel journalist rated TAM as worse than landing on a muddy grass strip surrounded by chickens. That's saying something. And when flights weren't delayed, they were rerouted unnecessarily through Sao Paulo, where pilots often had no choice but to attempt suicide maneuvers on a wet, stubby runway. Oh, and air traffic control, run by the military, who are underpaid, undertrained, and apparently under the impression that radar is an optional luxury. Combine that with an overburdened infrastructure and a tourism-driven economy unwilling to acknowledge its own failings, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Lion Air. Lion Air, Indonesia's low-cost carrier, has a history so turbulent that even a seatbelt sign can't keep it in check. This airline has been through it all. Bans, crashes, and even planes taking unplanned swimming lessons. Let's dive in. Lion Air took off in 2000, but by 2004, it had already made a crash landing into aviation infamy. A plane overshot the runway in Solo, Java, and tragically 25 people lost their lives. The airline blamed bad weather and strong tailwinds, but let's be real, most pilots don't let their planes slide into cemeteries. Then came 2013. When a Lion Air flight undershot a runway in Bali and ended up floating into the ocean like a rejected cruise ship. Miraculously, everyone survived. Passengers swam to safety, making it possibly the only flight where the life vest demo actually came in handy. Europe wasn't having any of it. Between 2007 and 2016, the European Union said nope and banned Lion Air from its airspace. Why? Too many accidents and safety concerns. Yikes. By 2016 and 2017, Lion Air had developed a strange hobby: planes clipping each other on runways. Seriously, this airline had more collisions than a bumper car track. Then came the 2018 disaster. A brand new Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashed into the sea, killing all 189 people on board. This wasn't just another accident, it was part of the global 737 MAX controversy. Indonesia's air safety record, well, let's just say if you're flying Lion Air, you might want to pack a parachute. Nepal Airlines. So, Nepal Airlines, where air travel comes with a little extra adventure and not the fun kind. This airline has been soaring and occasionally plummeting since 1958, back when it was called Royal Nepal Airlines, until the monarchy got the boot in 2008. But even with a new name, its safety record remains, let's say, questionable at best. In the past 8 years, Nepal has had 9 fatal crashes. That's more than 1 per year. If you're flying here, let's just say your in-flight entertainment might include a few nervous prayers. Nepal Airlines itself has had nearly a dozen fatal accidents in the last 30 years, despite not having a super busy schedule. It's like that one friend who barely drives but somehow still manages to crash their car a lot. In 2014, a Nepal Airlines flight tragically crashed, killing 18 people. And while the airline has improved in recent years, it still only gets 1 star from airlineratings.com, which, by the way, ranks safety out of 7 stars. That's like getting a 5% on a test. You get a point for spelling your name right, but everything else is a disaster. To be fair, flying in Nepal is hard. The Himalayas make for some of the most dangerous landings in the world, but Nepal Airlines struggles with an outdated fleet and inconsistent service, turning an already tough journey into a gamble. Tara Air. Picture this. You're flying through the Himalayas, mountains towering like ancient giants on both sides, and suddenly, bam! Your airline has a history of crashes that could make a Hollywood disaster movie jealous. Welcome to Tara Air, Nepal's high-altitude, high-risk airline. Founded in 2009 as the rebellious offspring of Yeti Airlines, Tara Air specializes in flying to places where most airlines wouldn't dare set foot. Think of the world's most extreme airports, where the runway is basically a cliffside suggestion rather than a landing strip. Lukla Jomsom Simicot. If it's remote, perilous, and surrounded by mountain goats, Tara Air is probably flying there. Now, let's talk about the elephant, or rather, the fleet in the room. Tara Air operates with just 3 planes. That's right, their entire fleet could fit into a single gate at a major airport, 2 Twin Otters and a Dream. But what they lack in numbers, they make up for in, well, let's call it adventurous aviation history. Their track record includes emergency landings, door malfunctions mid-flight, runway skids, and brace yourself, a plane that passengers had to push off the runway because the airport didn't have a vehicle for the job. And then there are the crashes, with multiple fatal incidents over the years, including one where a plane disappeared for 20 hours before being found in the mountains. Oh, and did we mention Tara Air is banned from flying in the EU? That's right. European authorities took one look at their record and said, nope. Ariana Afghan Airlines. So, Ariana Afghan Airlines, a company that's been through more turbulence than a plane flying through a monsoon with a broken wing. Founded in 1955, it's the oldest and largest airline in Afghanistan. But let's be real. Being the biggest airline in a country with only a handful of carriers is like being the best swimmer in a desert. It started strong with Douglas DC-3s, then partnered with Pan Am because back then, people still believed in Afghanistan's tourism potential. By the 60s, it was flying to Europe on a route called Marco Polo. Because why not romanticize a trip that probably involved more layovers than actual flying? Then came the Soviet-Afghan War, and things got spicy. The Soviets forced Ariana to swap its Western aircraft for Soviet Tupolevs, which is like trading a Ferrari for a Lada. By the 90s, under the Taliban, the airline was essentially a high-altitude smuggling ring carrying militants, cash, and opium. The UN was not amused and grounded the airline in 2001. After the Taliban fell, Ariana made a comeback with gifted Air India planes. But in 2006, Europe gave it the ultimate rejection letter, a full ban due to safety concerns. Translation, we don't trust your planes to land in one piece. And guess what? That ban is still in place in 2025. Now, with the Taliban back in control, Ariana's future is up in the air, pun intended. Would you fly with them? Let us know. Air Bagan. Now, let's talk about Air Bagan, Myanmar's own airline that's been flying since 2004. While they started strong with over 20 domestic destinations, their attempt at international flights in 2007 didn't exactly take off. Why? Safety concerns. The universal red flag of the aviation industry. Today, they have just one international route left, probably hanging on by a thread. But here's where things get spicy. US citizens aren't even allowed to deal with Air Bagan. Yep, you heard that right. Due to the US sanctions against Myanmar's government, booking a flight could technically land you in some bureaucratic trouble. It's like trying to buy Cuban cigars in the 90s. Cool in theory, but probably not worth the risk. Now, let's talk safety. 2 accidents, a few fatalities, which in airline terms actually makes them one of the safer options on the list, which says a lot about this list, honestly. The silver lining? They're working hard to complete their ICAO safety audit, meaning they might actually climb the aviation ladder soon. But here's where Air Bagan truly shines. Free refreshments on every flight, no matter how short. In a world where most airlines are charging for water, this is practically first-class treatment. And passengers seem to appreciate it. If they keep up this trend and nail their safety certifications, Air Bagan might just go from sketchy but comfy to actually decent in the near future. Kam Air. So, Kam Air, an airline that has managed to make a name for itself, but maybe not for the reason you'd want. If airlines had high school superlatives, Kam Air would win most likely to get banned from flying into your country. Founded in 2003, Kam Air proudly holds the title of Afghanistan's first privately owned airline, flying both domestic and international routes. Sounds great, right? Well, the European Union took one look at their safety record and said, no thanks. Since 2010, no Afghan airline, including Kam Air, is allowed to fly into the EU due to, you guessed it, serious safety concerns. And if you were hoping to catch a Kam Air flight to the US, think again. They're banned from American airspace too. Now, let's talk incidents. In 2005, Kam Air Flight 904 tragically crashed into the mountains near Kabul, killing all 104 people on board. Then came a bomb threat, a tail strike incident that the airline apparently shrugged off, and an overall refusal to meet International Civil Aviation Organization standards. It's almost as if Kam Air is playing aviation on hard mode and just refusing to read the rulebook. Despite all this, Kam Air is still flying, operating a fleet of 11 planes and serving routes across Afghanistan, the Middle East, and South Asia. But would you book a ticket? That's the real question. Buckle up, folks, because if you're flying Kam Air, you might need more than just a seatbelt. SCAT Airlines. Alright, let's talk about SCAT Airlines. First off, the name. Yeah, it's exactly what you're thinking. Unfortunately, it's not just a branding issue. The airline's reputation has been, let's say, turbulent at best. Founded in 1997, SCAT managed to land itself on the European Commission's blacklist, not because of frequent crashes, just one deadly incident in 2013, but because European regulators took one look at its safety protocols and basically said, nope. Even other Kazakh airlines suffer from the association. If you're heading to Kazakhstan, Air Astana might be a wiser choice, unless you enjoy white-knuckle experiences. But credit where it's due, SCAT tried to clean up its act. In 2018, it got off the blacklist and even joined the International Air Transport Association, making it the only second Kazakh airline to do so. They also went big on Boeing 73 MAX aircrafts, right before the MAX's global grounding due to those infamous crashes. Talk about timing. But in true SCAT fashion, they were the first airline outside the Americas to restart flights with the MAX in 2021 because courage. As for incidents, beyond the 2013 crash that killed 21 people, they've also had a dramatic tail strike with the Boeing 757 in 2018. No injuries, but the plane certainly didn't appreciate it. So, SCAT Airlines. An airline that flies, but perhaps not the safest bet. At least they make flying exciting, just not the way you'd hope.